This is the episode 8 of my free UI design course, and today we will cover input fields in UI design and some important properties of login sign up form that you should keep in mind. Now let's start with a very basic question. What is input field? Now input field actually a UI element by the help of which you can take input from user. Now the input can be of any type. It can be an email ID, a phone number, or a date, or a color picker, or the upload file button, like the upload file button we have, that is also an input field. That so you can take any type of input either from a digital file or a number or a color or anything. Okay, now let's see some common elements or the most important elements of the input field. Now we have the input field here. If I zoom in, now first of all we have the label icon, and then we have the label, like the floating text over the input field is called the label. Now the label and the label icon does the same thing. They tell us about the input field, like what is the input field about, like what we have to do with that input field. Now next we have is the placeholder text. Now placeholder text is the text we see by default on the input field, like when we have not typed anything. So the text that is visible there, it's known as the placeholder text. Now we use placeholder text to either tell about the input field, like in this state we are showing them to create a password, or you can use placeholder text to tell about the content, like if it's an input field of zip code, then we can show user the example of a zip code like 123. We can show an example of what we want from user in that input field placeholder text. Then we have the helper text. Now helper text mainly either show a error. Imagine if I entered wrong password here, then we can show error in the helper text, or we use helper text to ask for some special requirements, like in this case we have the minimum 8 letters. And then we have the helper icon, and it's always a good idea to add helper icon with the helper text because that makes it easy to scan. Next we have is the helper or action button, like in this case this is the action button, like it can show or hide the password. But we can also use this in other way, like we can remove this helper text from here and we can add it here, so that whenever user will tap on it, he will see the requirements in the pop-up button. And we can also use that thing to show the error, so that whenever an error occurs or we want to show user something, that a pop-up will be emerged from that icon. Okay, next we have is the state indicator. Now state indicator is actually the stroke, and when the input field is active, we mainly change the stroke color of that input field. You can see here. Okay, then we have the active text here, like in this case it was password, so we have the active text. Then we have the typing indicator, like this one stroke line we have here is the active indicator. Then we have the active label icon. In this we have changed the color of the icon, and it's always a good idea to change the color of the icon input field when it's active. Now let us look at some of the types of input field. First of all we have the normal text input field, like you see this input field everywhere. Then we have the password input field. Now in password input field, the extra button we have is the show hide button, and we can also show a progress indicator here in the bottom, or the special requirement things here, like your password is weak, strong, or that thing. Okay, and one more important thing, that you should not ask for a secured password from your user. You should ask for secured password only if required, like in an online payment app or online banking app. You need a strong password. In that case you also need a OTP, so you can ask for both. But a app like Pinterest or any simple app which don't need that much amount of security, you don't need to ask for a strong password. That will irritate the user, because in majority of the apps we use the same password again and again. Yeah, in some special apps like Instagram or our Google account, we use different password which are more secure, but in simple apps like Pinterest we use our normal password. Okay, so you should avoid asking for a strong password if not required. Now next we have is the date picker. Now we have two type of date picker. In first one we only show the year, month, and week, but in the second one we show them the whole calendar. Like here we can also see the weekday and where the week will start and when the week will end. Now these both two date pickers have different use case. Like you should use this type of date picker where the weekday is not visible, like in this weekday is visible, in this the weekday is not visible. You should use this type of thing in like date of birth thing, or like when I will graduate from this university, or when I joined this company. In that case we only need the month, year, and the date. But if you are designing a like event booking app, like I have an event on 17th of August, then it's important for me that I should know that on what weekday, like my event is on 17 Monday, so it's very important for me to know that my event is on Monday, so that I can pick the date accordingly. Okay, similarly if you are booking a movie or anything else, then you should always show a weekday. Next we have the mini text field, like we have the expiry date and CVV and the zip code. And you should always reduce the width of input field if it's not that much big, like the content inside that input field is not that much big. Like in this case we have the zip code, so it's only 6 code digit or the 4 code digit. You should not use a full width input field because that will take unnecessary space and attention of the user. And you should always try to decrease the amount of input fields you have. Like you should not ask for everything when the user logins for the first time, like full name or the username or like phone number and email address. Both the things you can go with one. You can ask for these things later once user has created profile, because our main goal at that time is to get a basic information. Like in a very simple application or website, we only need email or password or phone number or password. Okay, you don't need to ask for extra information which is not important, like the date of birth of the user. If it's not that much important, you can ask for these things later once they have signed it up inside the app, because if the login sign up forms is a little bit confusing for the user, they will leave the app. Okay, next thing we have is the text area or the text book. Now these things are used for mainly writing long paragraphs or long text, like if you're writing a description of a YouTube video or a course or any other thing. Okay, so we have three categories in the text area. First one is actually expandable. You can simply click on that and drag it, then it will change the text area size. Now in the second one we have a scroll bar here, and in both of the cases there is no text limit. You can write as much text you want. But in the third one we have a text limit, like we have a text limit of 250, and in that case it will throw an error. And here the text area height is also fixed, so use any of these according to your requirements. Okay, now let us look at some of the designs of input field and the best one you should be using. Now first of all we have the floating label. In this, the label of the input field is actually floating on the top, like we have this thing here. Now this type of input field is used by all the Google apps. Let me show you. Like if I go here in the create new account, you can see that we have a floating label here. Similarly, if I click here, then it will float to the top. By default it was in the placeholder option. If I click it will change it to, like by default the label is on the place of the placeholder text, but if I click it or the input field is in the active state, then the placeholder text will be converted into the label. It will go to the top of the input field. So it's the best option you should be using, because in this the label is always visible. Like even when I'm typing or have typed, the label will be visible. And it's very important that you always show your label in the top, because after filling a form your user might forget that what was the input field was about. Like if I remove this label from here, I don't know what this input field was about. Either it was a username or a email account or a my name or full name or last name. I don't know that. So it's always a good idea to show the label all that time. Okay, now next category we have is the floating label version 2. The design of this input field is also same. In this, just we have the underline here. We have another version of this floating label. In this, the label is inside the input field. The input field height is actually quite big. Next we have is the external label. Here the label is placed outside the input field, you can see here. But this input field takes a lot of space as compared to these three, and these three are the best. You should go with any of these things, but you can also use this if you have a lot of space, and space is not a problem for you. Okay, next thing we have is no label input field, and you should avoid using this. Like I don't know what is this, like this is my studio name or the agency name or the username or my name or anything. I don't know that thing. So once I have entered the data, I will not be able to recognize this field. Okay, and this thing gives a very bad user experience when there is an error. If I show user an error like this is invalid data, then user will not be able to understand why this is invalid data, like did I write something wrong or anything else. So you should always show the label of the input field. Now next thing we have is the size and spacing of the input field. Now if you want to learn about size and spacing of input field, go to my Instagram, link is in the description. Here I have created a detailed post about what should be the size of the input field. You can go and refer that, and here I have a login form size guide. Just go to my Instagram, scroll down a bit and you will find this post. Link is in the description. You can go from there also. Here I have shown you all type of input fields, like the floating label, like the rounded corner version, and the with icon or without icon version. You can just go and refer that. And when it comes to the width of the input field, now we don't have actually fixed width of the input field. There is no fixed number that how much should be the width of the input field. You can pick the width size according to your requirement that suits your design. And to get a more better about size and spacing of input field, you have to go to different website and use this plugin called Dimensions. Link is in the description. Just click on it and you will be able to see the width of the input field if you just hover over the element. And there is one more plugin like Pesticides. It will show you the outline of all the elements we have. So with the help of this, you will get a better idea of the layout. And the next plugin or extension we have is actually What Font. If you just click on it, then it will show you the properties of all the fonts we have here. If I click here, let me close Pesticide. Okay, then it will show you the properties of all the fonts available on the screen. Like you can see, this is Roboto, this is the font family, then we have the style normal, then the font size is 16 pixels, we have the weight here, we have the color here. Okay, if I just close it, and make sure that you pin all of your extensions, like simply go in the plugins option and pin it, then you will be able to run them very easily by simply clicking on them. Okay, and there are more advanced properties about input field. I will create a separate video for that in future, but these things are enough. It will help you a lot as a beginner to create a perfect design form with a good UX, and we'll see you in another video. Till then, bye.